So Dandadan is this new series that's been gaining a lot of attention recently, and a lot of it is well deserved. The series is this weird fusion of creativity that takes ideas and concepts from genres like action, comedy, and romance, and rolls them in a shonen coding to create something that just might be special. The ideas behind this high energy series are unique. It presents a world where both the occult and extraterrestrial life are real and are affecting the world in different ways. It's a series that you'd assume would have a smaller fan base because of its style and presentation, but the story has somehow achieved widespread attention, drawing interest comparable to the biggest anime of the season. Dandadan follows two teenagers, Momo and Okarun. Momo is a fairly popular girl who comes from a family of spirit mediums and firmly believes that ghosts exist, while Okarun is a social outcast who thinks aliens are real. Naturally, they don't buy into each other's beliefs, so they end up challenging one another to visit supernatural hotspots. It turns out both of them are right, and the duo end up battling ghosts and aliens together due to their extremely unusual situation. The story is a sci-fi fantasy romantic comedy that thrives on defying expectations of what you expect the action set pieces to be, and while the core plot is centered around the supernatural action that takes place, Dandadan is absolutely a rom-com. The story starts with Momo getting dumped, and it doesn't take too long before she begins developing feelings for Okarun. The supernatural search for Okarun's testicles is one of the focal points of the series, but the series' direction lies in the romantic relationship between Okarun and Momo, and as far as shonen go, their relationship is genuinely great. In typical rom-com fashion, they at first don't really get along, and I wouldn't say either character is initially all that likable. Okarun is an elitist snob, and Momo is incredibly rude, but they do get better in later chapters as we see them bond and work together. The romance is sometimes sidelined by the chaotic events that take place, but it is the anchor of the series. Okarun and Momo have an incredibly authentic relationship, and it does feel like their feelings grow organically. It's sweet and real, and it grounds the story despite how frantically surreal the plot can be. And things do get surreal. The plot literally initially centers on a speedster ghost grandma possessing Okarun's body and eventually taking and losing his testicles, which the duo was then forced to look for, and things only get crazier from here. The series is constantly ramping up its absurdity. It bounces from one idea to another, each one crazier than the last. It's immature in the same way that Chainsaw Man is, but rather than calmly accepting the madness in the same way that many Chainsaw Man characters tend to do, the characters in Dandadan constantly yell and shout about the chaos as it takes place in front of them. The series is fun, and while I wouldn't necessarily call the writing masterful, there's little inklings of depth here and there. The show isn't just about winning intense battles or fighting over metaphysical beliefs. The series' frantic energy, nonsensical plot, and absurd monsters belie the heart that Dandadan has underneath. The series is centered around the importance of human connection, even despite clashing perspectives. Momo and Okarun both have strong emotional ties to otherworldly creatures, despite the fact that neither of them had ever seen any before their chance encounter. Momo's grandmother Seiko Ayase is a spirit medium who is able to understand and communicate with spirits. Even when she's bullied by her classmates because of her strange habits that she uses to ward off bad luck, she still defends her grandmother, the only family that she still has. Okarun's beliefs are similarly emotional. He's an outcast at school with no friends at all, so he'd call out to the skies for a UFO to see if aliens would come down to Earth and befriend him. The series genuinely has tender moments, and those moments come to the forefront with intimate or heartbreaking scenes. No new character is introduced without reason, and thought behind why they are the way they are. The story behind Acrobatic Silky and the reason behind her obsession with Ira was especially shocking for me the first time I read it. And while the humor is hit or miss, it does hit more than it misses. Some of the jokes landed surprisingly well with me, which is impressive considering I rarely ever laugh at shonen. Humor is hard to do with translations and different cultures finding different things funny, but Dandadan did get some laughs out of me. Now, Dandadan won't win everyone over. The series does have its flaws. There's no endgame in sight, and it's pretty clear that the series creator, Yukinobu Tatsu, doesn't really know where he's going with the story either. Now, that's fine with me. Dandadan is very much a journey not destination type of series, but I can see why that bothers some people. The fan service isn't as frequent as one would think for this type of story, but it can still be annoying. And Dandadan is a very loud show. Now, when I read through the manga, I didn't really have this issue, but it's pretty apparent in the anime. When the shouting is constant because of the story's non-stop madness, it can get irritating at times. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the first chapter. I'll say it now. The first chapter is absolutely not indicative of the rest of the manga, and it's not an accurate representation of what the story is about. I completely understand why people wouldn't want to continue after that. I've seen chapter 1 compared to Gantz online, and holy crap, that's a really good series to compare it to. But after the darker first chapter, the story does become more of a lighthearted shonen romance. The first chapter is misleading, and I was worried earlier on that it hurt the series' appeal, but both the manga and the anime seem to have gotten positive reception, and I'm glad that they did. Dandadan truly is different, a manga in a genre of its own making. The humor can hit, and the plot is a whirlwind of chaos that you can never quite predict. I'm surprised that this is a weekly manga with the sheer amount of effort put into every panel. Tatsu is one of the best artists in the industry right now, and his design and paneling work is up there with the greats. Dandadan may never have true mass appeal in the West with its strange humor and disgusting villains. That, along with its quick shifts from humorous to intense to heartbreaking, make it clear that the manga is completely unpredictable in the best way possible. I'm happy to recommend this to any anime fan who's looking for something a little bit different. Just beware of the first chapter. And that's all for now. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. It really helps me out, and I'll see you guys next time.